let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts. What is this one? 7? Something like that? 8? I don't know. Let's actually find out. This one is 7 apparently. I'm here, of course, as often, with Vishanti. Vishanti, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm frantically trying to get my last minute costume things done for a convention that I'm leaving for this week, so I'm in that like con crunch mode of why do I always wait till the last minute to do things and stress myself out? But you know, why would I start early and get done early when I could just put it all off to the last minute?
Look, careful planning and keeping to a schedule pays off eventually. Being lazy pays off now.
That's right.
So, before we actually get into things, there is a super chat I want to read off. It's from Valkyrie Vision, who says, D squee. I suppose the D probably stands for Dapper. And then also she said that she was very excited to be here to listen to this live. Well, I'm excited that you're here to listen to this live too. And we have a fair few people in here, many of whom have not hit like yet, though. So do get on that, guys. So we are here to hopefully finish up Geologic Bias versus the Witness of Fossils, which is a creationist talk about geology. We've only got about 8.5 minutes of it left. Now, that's probably not going to do us for the entire 2-ish hours that I have these scheduled for usually. So what that means is that we may be jumping into another video that I also got today, which is 5 things you never heard about dinosaurs or something like that. It's actually from the same channel, and it was one of their most watched videos because I decided to sort them by views. Because they have a pretty wide range of views. Like, they have some videos that have like 40, 50,000 views, and then some that are like 500. So, it's clear that some of the things there are more interesting than others. But yeah, we are not doing any official drinking rules, although I'll be honest, the drink I have in front of me does have some vodka in it, because I made 2 videos today that were, or not today, this week, that were both animated, and it was a long and arduous process. So I'm here to relax a little bit today. So with that, Vishanti, do you have anything you want to add before we just dive right into this video?
Pray for my thumbs because I'm hand sewing and I don't have a thimble, so R.I.P. my epidermis.
You know, I've never actually used a thimble, and I actually do sew.
I mean, what I should do is take one of the scrap pieces of like leather rawhide that I have and just fold it over my thumb. That's like the easiest thing that you can do to protect like your thumb pad. And for just some reason, I just never do it because estoy perezosa.
I just stab myself occasionally.
I mean, there's this saying that we have in the cosplay community that it's not done until you bleed on it, and boy, is that a thing.
Yeah. I used to do a lot of making miniatures and whatnot, and that requires a fair bit of craft knife use, and I still have scars from various
like for
times.
Warhammer and stuff?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I still have scars on my fingers that are just like, oh hey, I remember the model that gave me that scar.
Yep.
I have a very
wanna know how I got these scars?
It was Dark Eldar.
Oh.
Alright, so guys, where we left off, we were being told about how sometimes God uses plagues and other things other than floods as judgments. And I think we're going to jump into the importance of the flood being a flood and how it's probably going to like leave evidence or something like that, even though it obviously didn't. So here we go. Geologic Bias versus the Witness of Fossils. I don't even remember the name of the guy giving this talk because he's basically a nobody. So here we go.
But there's another reason why the problem with them reinterpreting these layers of fossiliferous rocks.
I want to say no one reinterpreted the layers of fossiliferous rocks.
Yeah, I was going to say they just interpreted them.
Right. There was no serious attempt at interpretation beforehand. There was just people who were like, I guess maybe the flood or something. But those people were also only really in like Europe, parts of North Africa, parts of the Middle East. Right? Like that wasn't a worldwide thing. And yeah, I'm specifically basically saying basically the Abrahamic religions that have Genesis as like a common, at least background information, because Islam doesn't actually consider the text of Genesis to be scripture, but like, Christianity and Judaism do, as well as some of the offshoots of both that have happened,
Druze,
since.
Yazidi.
Yeah. Well, the Yazidis are a
Yeah.
little weird on the actual text of Genesis.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
That's
the
fair.
Druze, I mean, actually, they're a little weird on it too because they're an offshoot out of Islam. So, but yeah, those are all groups that have that sort of as background information.
Yeah, and it's so funny to me that like people don't really understand that like there are many, many, many religions on the planet that you can convert into and in some cases out of, and the Druze is not one of those.
Yeah, no. I mean, I guess technically you can kind of convert out of by just stopping to do any of the practices, but officially you're still a Druze.
Yep.
But yeah, the only way to become a Druze is to be born to 2 Druze parents. One doesn't cut it.
Yep.
And yeah, that's there's others too. There's what's that group that big on John the Baptist? Mandaeans.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, the Mandaeans. Yeah.
Can't convert
That's
to
right.
Mandaeism either. Got to be born into it. Anyway,
R.I.P.
well, I mean, there is a reason both religions are in numerical decline and will cease to exist in
Yeah.
probably the next couple centuries.
Also, Dark Half 75 says push it through with your thumbnail, Vishanti. I'm like, I'm gonna laugh at that because what thumbnail? I have extremely short fingernails, partly because I used to take martial arts and you can't make a fist with long fingernails. Partly also, and mainly because I'm a drummer by trade, so I can't grip sticks with long fingernails digging into my palm. So,
Well, then it's time to get those really big fake nails that like that curve into like big claws. Gotta get those.
like those big acrylic nails.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just have to find like a beauty salon that's in like the African American part of town. And
Oh
there
yeah,
you
I
go.
know plenty of people who do those nails, but I'm
you
just
go.
like, that's not gonna work for me.
Just don't get in there to have your hair done. It's like that's a very different skill set.
Yeah, I know people who are into like microbraiding and extensions and weave and
Yeah.
stuff, and like it's an art.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So anyway, here we go.
In support of deep time, in support of slow and gradual accumulations. And that is because of what these rocks were always meant to mean.
Meant.
The rocks aren't
What?
meant for anything. They just are. Like, okay, I get that if your worldview is that literally the entire planet was a direct miraculous creation by a personal god, then it's easy to attribute intentionality and purpose to lots of seemingly purposeless phenomena, right? But if you don't start with that assumption that it's a direct miracle, most things that you see in the natural world don't have a purpose. They just are. Like, we're looking at the Isis Temple formation in the Grand Canyon. It's not there for anything. It just exists. If you happen to find a purpose for it, like, oh, you're going to paint it, so now its purpose for you is to help you produce fun art, or if, someone's using the limestone from it for some purpose, like they're going to make, I don't know, a building out of it or something, which, I mean, it's easier to get limestone, but we're just making stuff up right now as, like, examples, then that's its purpose for that moment, for that person. But yeah, the rocks don't just have a purpose unless you start with start with his conclusion. In fact, even most versions of theism don't come about with, like, every specific rock having a purpose. It's just a weird way to think about the world, in my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but it's very like Western Christian centric the way that he's doing it, because it's like everything has a meaning and it's all about me. Like, it's just very self-centric, But I digress.
All right, here we go. And guys, we are probably going to get through this thing. So.
Now, we know why God sent the flood, to destroy the wickedness of the human race on the earth in those days. But if you look at it biblically, many times when God enacted judgment upon people, he used other things like plagues.
Or people interpreted the plague as a judgment.
But what about one giant frog?
Yes, it's one giant frog. It's really just one giant Spaniard, to be honest.
Now that's way too much of a deep cut.
I know. Okay, so I'll just let them in on the frog part.
Okay.
So in the 10 plagues in Exodus, there is a very famous rabbinical discussion on the difference between two different verses, where the first instance is God releases a plague of frogs, plural, but then a few verses later, it uses the singular, frog. And there's a big treatise on whether it was a plague of lots and lots of frogs or if it was one enormous kaiju frog.
I personally think the authorial intent is lots of frogs, but my preferred vision in my head is a Godzilla-sized frog stomping around Egypt.
Ribbit.
All right. Here we go.
Oh.
Plagues would sweep out amongst the Israelites. Then when they were in the wilderness. Snakes in one case. But he did it this case with a global flood. And I believe he did it this way, instead of by a plague, which would have left no lasting evidence.
I mean, a plague from a few thousand years ago definitely would have left lasting evidence.
Listen, the whole thing about ERVs is that they're lasting evidence of plagues and viruses. So
right, yeah, just infect everyone with the retrovirus that endogenize. You're God, you can do that. It's actually that would be pretty impressive. But also, there is no evidence of the flood, so if that was God's intent, pretty bad attempt.
Didn't quite work out, yeah.
Right. It actually is much more like if there were a global flood, then God arranged literally everything to make it look exactly as if there hadn't been one. But
so to answer the question Andrew Cumming is asking, I'm assuming in regards to my frog thing, honestly, I don't really understand why people would argue about something like that. Andrew, the whole thing is that for every, I guess, passage in the Hebrew Bible, there are discussions about word choice. And if you go with the idea that the author, whoever you want to say that author was, had authorial intent, you have to kind of ask all right, why did they use this word here and not this word here? Why did they use frogs plural here and not a singular frog in that passage? You're just trying to kind of discuss among yourselves the nuances of text. And that's pretty common in a lot of traditions. Why did they pick this word? Why did they phrase it this way? It's just that the Jews write down those conversations.
Yeah, I was going to say...
we have 48 or 49 volumes of those conversations.
Yeah,
so...
If you're wondering why a group of Jewish scholars would argue over minutiae, you're just not very familiar with Jewish religious writing.
You just don't really get. That's pretty much what the bulk of Jewish scholarship is us arguing and discussing and debating and, chit-chatting about our texts. And I love doing it. I love discussing why the author picked a certain word or used a certain turn of phrase. And you get that a lot actually in academia when people are doing comparative religious studies, where I think Dr. Josh mentioned it this week on a podcast where he was discussing the parallel vocabulary and I guess word choice between Near Eastern flood legends in the Hebrew Bible. And he was discussing how one particular passage in the Hebrew Bible uses the Assyrian word for pitch or tar. And he was saying there's actually a Hebrew word that is for pitch that they use otherwise in lots of other places, but in this one specific instance, they use the Assyrian word. So these cultures were very clearly influencing each other, and it's more of in his mind, it was more of a polemic against the Near Eastern flood legends of Babylon and Assyria, and he made a really good case for it. So studying little minutiae like that, it's probably boring for a lot of people, but for weirdo brainiacs like me, it's bread and butter. Yeah.
All right.
And NA says Jews would debate over what the rakia was made of, copper or brass, and how thick the rakia was too. I actually remember the passage in Talmud that tells you how long and how thick the rakia is. That's actually in one of the opening discussions in the first volume of the Talmud. It talks about sunset times and sunrise times and how long it takes the sun to transit the dome and how thick the dome is. And then they say, well, the other nations, referring to Greeks, think that the sun goes below the earth when it's nighttime, and we think it goes above the dome, but the Greeks are probably right on this one. So I'm like, hey, congrats.
And yes, they were.
They were, in fact, right. It does appear to go below the earth.
And
the earth is round.
Yep. which is something that they were among the first people to discover, the Greeks.
Yep.
That is.
Mhm.
All right, here we go. We've only got 7.5 minutes. We can do this.
Okay.
He did it this way to leave a memorial, a monument, if you will, to remind us of one thing, and that's just how much God hates sin. He wanted to leave an.
You have something?
Okay. No, I'm just. It's just me going
Oh, okay.
lol. Okay to
Yeah.
Christian theology, like, yeah. Okay.
Also, I'll point out that in the actual text, the reminder is supposed to be the rainbow, not like
Yeah. The
geology.
right.
Like, the text gives you what the reminder is supposed to be, and it's not geology. Like, in fact, in other parts of the Bible, people use rocks as memorials, and it's never really tied back to the flood.
Yeah, I mean, they put up rocks when they cross the Jordan River. They put up rocks when Jacob sees like a vision of ladders and stuff going up and down them. Like, rocks are memorials because they don't tend to disappear or like disintegrate like other stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
it's
handy
so
like
funny.
that.
It's like the memorial is the rainbow, but they're like the rocks. Like, no.
Yep, no.
Nope.
Despite the fact that rocks are often actually used as memorials, in this instance, God's like, no, it's the rainbow.
It's the rainbow specifically.
Just ignore that.
Because you generally see it after or during rain, which, there's a pretty significant bit about rain in there, so.
Weird how it connects like
reminder.
that. All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
Everlasting memorial to us to remind us just how much God hates sin. And when they reinterpreted the fossil record, they took that away.
Which is not a thing that happened. We covered. Yeah.
Interpret.
That important reminder away of just how much God hates sin. And his hatred of sin has never changed.
Oh,
but they also didn't take away the rainbow. It's still there.
It's still there. And I would just, not for nothing, like to note for this particular apologist that if he's going to say that God's hatred of sin never changes, he's going to be painting himself into a real awkward corner. Because there are lots of sins listed in the Hebrew Bible that he doesn't think are sins anymore.
Oh, no, see, God's definition can change. It's his hatred that can't.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, the category X always makes me this amount angry, but category X can move around.
Oh, but they said those are not in category X anymore.
Right, exactly.
Clever.
Yes.
Clever girl.
Look, I'm not here to tell people what to believe about their spiritual stuff.
I know. It's mostly just me feeling petty because some idiots on Twitter spun me up this morning. So.
I feel like that's the only thing that happens to you on Twitter. That you get spun up by idiots.
Not necessarily. I do post about other things, but they're not appropriate to mention on air.
The non-binary bead says, except the gays stole the rainbow. Actually, that's... Ken Ham has this whole thing about trying to reclaim the rainbow, and he's put, like, rainbows all over the Ark Park, and, like, every once in a while he lights up the Ark with, like, the colors. But the thing is, he's specifically using the colors of the pride flag and not the colors of the actual rainbow, which aren't actually the same. So...
I love it. It's the gayest Ark ever.
It
it's
is.
such a cell phone.
It's like, dude, you could actually use the real colors of the real rainbow, but instead you're just straight up going for the pride colors. You don't have to. Because the big difference is that the purple at the bottom of the pride flag doesn't actually appear in a single rainbow. For purple to appear, there has to actually be a double rainbow, because there's no such thing as purple light.
All the way across the sky.
Right. The rainbow is actually just refracting light into individual wavelengths, but since there is no purple wavelength that exists, the only way to get purple in a rainbow is for the dark blue band to overlap with the red band of another rainbow. Which means
all
that...
the theater kids who had to do lighting are like, yeah, I'm having flashbacks.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Ken Ham has specifically gone with the pride colors, not the rainbow colors, which I find it hilarious. All right, here we go.
It's never changed. The modern church has kind of softened God's nature. They talk all about God's love and don't talk about his hatred of not just the sin, but of the sinner.
Says the modern church man.
Right. Have you considered that you win more flies with honey?
Yeah.
But also that, like, independent fundamentalist Baptists are not, in fact, softening God. In fact, they're going a little too hard.
Yeah. But also, when you look at like preaching in the New Testament, there's some like hellfire and brimstone stuff in there, but it's also primarily about like, God's love and wanting you to become part of his, you know, family, for want of a better word, 'cause just talk about like adopted sonship and all that stuff.
And you know what I think is really ironic is there's no mention of hell in the Hebrew Bible, but you're going to get hell and Gehenna and all that other stuff. You're going to get that in the New Testament, my friend.
Yeah, there's a whole lot you can look into in the development of the Christian doctrine of hell, which actually isn't even a universal doctrine in Christianity. There are plenty of Christians who don't believe in a everlasting torment. There are even Christians who believe in variations where there might be some kind of torment, but it doesn't have to be everlasting. Or like there's
Yeah.
cessationists who believe that people's souls will simply be snuffed out of existence. Like there's a whole range of things. And one of the things that bugs me about a lot of these creationists is that they just assume that their brand of Christianity is Christianity when it's really, really not. It just really isn't. And yeah, they just don't have a monopoly on things like the interpretation of the Bible. So here we
Well,
go.
tell them that.
Well, you know what? I'm telling them that right now. I know there are creationists who watch my stuff. Look, if you're a young Earth creationist and you're watching this, you know who you are. You don't have a monopoly on the Bible or Christianity. So
Well, those people are
please-
just wrong and they're not listening to the Holy Spirit.
look, even if they are wrong, that still doesn't mean that they're not putting in a good faith effort to interpret
Yeah.
the Bible the way that they feel is correct. Right? They're not just being anti-biblical. Anyway, here we go.
His hatred of sin has never changed. The God that destroyed that world by flood, that terrible event, killing all of those people, all of those plants, all of those animals, that is the God that we will appear before one day. The writer of Hebrews says it is a terrifying thing to be in the hand of the Almighty God. And one day we will stand there in the hand of the Almighty God, giving an account for the sins that were in our life. And I have to think, not only has God's hatred of sin not changed, but it's probably worse today. Because
Well, let me ask the apologist this, and you guys are welcome to take my really old petty dunk for yourselves.
Okay.
Find a fundamentalist who is a Bible literalist, and ask them just in good faith, like, do you believe that, Isaiah, for instance, is a prophet? Most of them are going to say yes. Ask them after that, do you believe that all of the things that Isaiah, for instance, has prophesied have come true? There's not an option. They're going to have to say no. All right. And then you're going to flip to the end of Isaiah where it's discussing chariots, and fire and all these other things, and the Lord's coming back and all this stuff. And it's going to make a very specific reference to what we can only assume is a pagan practice. And it also, in that very same verse, references people who eat unclean foods and that the Lord is going to judge them. And then you need to ask that person, hey, if you don't think that everything's been accomplished yet, and you don't think this verse has been fulfilled, do you think maybe that part about the food is relevant? And that's going to get real awkward real fast.
Well, I leave that as an exercise to the viewer to have fun with that one.
And be nice about it. Don't try to just be a douche, but ask them that seriously. Like, you need to really think about how you're structuring your theology, because if you want to take every single thing literally and not just as a polemic, then you really got to reckon with some of that. So
Sorry,
yikes.
it's just such a weird thing to me that there's this segment of Christianity for whom taking everything super literally is like the go-to strategy. Because I'm familiar
Yeah.
with a fair bit of the history of like Christian like theology and development of doctrines and things like that, and it's like that is not a typical thing for the vast majority of history for the vast majority of Christians.
Yeah.
We have a $10 super chat from Blitz Winters, thank you very much, who says, way to contradict yourself in the same sentence, guy. Not only is God's hatred of sin unchanged, but I think it's probably worse today. Yeah, I was about to talk about that too.
Yeah.
If it's unchanged, it can't be worse, and vice versa. Yeah, that is
Correct.
one of those things where, like, you gotta pick a lane, man. Also, one of the things that has been a big topic, at least in Christian theology, is that if God's perfect, he literally can't change. So You can't say that his hatred for sin got worse, because then either God got better or worse because of the change. Therefore, he either wasn't perfect before or isn't perfect now. So, like,
Hmm.
yeah, imputing change onto God from like a Christian theology standpoint is a pretty iffy thing to do.
Yeah.
So,
And I will
yeah.
say props to Jessica, who says, I was young Earth creationist, born and raised. I am no longer. I like your channel, Dapper, and channels like yours because they help me heal. And doing such brainwashing can take a lifetime. Your channel gives me catharsis.
Well, thank you. Look, that's one of the reasons I'm here, right? I'm a former young Earth creationist. So is Vishanti. So were like many of my other regular guests, like Bent Hovind and Gutsick Gibbon. So, and I have like an interview show for people who've left young Earth creationism, and so that's a big part of why I'm here, is to help people who are former young Earth creationists. Because you know what, a lot of the people, myself included, who are on this channel know exactly what that's like, because that's us.
Yep. I'm still deconstructing. I'm still working through it. I catch myself with old patterns of thinking all the time. So it does take a lot of work. So
Yeah.
you're in good company, Jessica, for sure.
Yeah. And hey, you're very welcome here. So,
Hell yeah.
and that is independent of what may or may not have happened to your other parts of religious identity. We are
Yep.
perfectly welcoming for Christians, atheists, agnostics, people of other religions, any of those things.
Yep.
Just got to
Just 'cause
not be a
you're
jerk.
not a young Earth creationist, you don't have to change religions or even stop being religious. So, yep.
A lot of my guests for leaving Young Earth Creationist are either still religious in some capacity or even still Christian. So.
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Unlike the time of Noah, we live in the time following the death and resurrection of his son, Jesus Christ. We're sinning now, knowing.
All right, if this doesn't change from preaching pretty soon, we're just going to go to the next video.
Right.
Because the one thing I don't allow on the channel is people to just preach just theology, right? There has to be some kind of scientific implication. And I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should accept Christ into your life as your savior, or whether you should go get baptized, or whether you should become a Muslim, or, I don't know, follow the Eightfold Path of the Great Buddha. Like, none of those things are my job. So
Yeah.
we're going to give this guy, like, 20 more seconds, and if it's just preaching, we're going to switch to the next video.
That his son died for us. And I think God's hatred of sin in a person's life now, with that knowledge, has to be greater than it was for the sinner back in Noah's day. Well, Jesus reminded us, again, that the latter judgment will come much as the first.
All right, so that was all just preaching.
Yeah.
I also want to say hi to O Love, who's a former Old Earth creationist coming out of the JW, Jehovah's Witnesses. That is not an easy thing to leave, so you know what?
Yeah, props.
Yeah.
Super props.
That is... Look, I'm very religiously neutral, however, there's an exception for cults. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very happy that you got out of that, and that's a tough thing for the rest of your life, right? To be a former Jehovah's Witness, because they make it as miserable as possible to leave.
Yeah, it's one of the still, like, active religious traditions that practices shunning, and that's just, like, wildly uncool.
Yeah. There are things that I'm okay with shunning for, like, you know, I don't know, like murder or something. Leaving the religion, not one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to shun people who are actually legitimately awful to other people, like actually like making victims of other people in serious ways, okay, fine. That's a perfectly reasonable reason to disassociate yourself from people. But if they've decided that they've come to a different conclusion about theological matters than you, that's not a good enough reason. Unless, of course, that theology involves things like murder.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to start up the video, What You Haven't Been Told About Dinosaurs. It begins from the Apologetic Symposium from Church. So we're going to learn new things about dinosaurs, apparently. If I don't learn new stuff, I'm going to be disappointed. So let's see if I can.
I'm setting my bar super high for this one.
Well,
call me a cynic.
Yeah, you probably should. All right, can you still see this? Vishanti?
Oh God, they're using papyrus.
Okay, look, guys. Graphic design pro tip: there are a couple fonts that you only use as a joke. One of them is papyrus.
The
Other one,
Comic Sans.
Comic Sans. Yep, exactly. Those are the two joke fonts. Don't unless it's a direct joke. Like Kerbal Space Program makes a lot of use of Comic Sans, but it's itself a joke because it puts them on things that are supposed to be jokes, right?
Yeah.
That's how you use Comic Sans. Same as going for papyrus. If you want people to take you seriously, don't use papyrus. Now, there's a lot of reasons not for you to not want people to take you seriously, right? If you're doing something silly, great, use papyrus.
And this intro screen is very like graphic design is my passion. Like there's a picture of an eclipsed moon. Then you've got some weird filaments that don't look like
They're definitely not vertebrae.
rib cage. What is that, like?
I think that's
feather pinions or something.
It might be feather things. It could also just be some kind of like fungal bloom. Fungal reproductive structure.
There's that, and then there's just a random excerpt from probably the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then you have White Jesus, and then you have like a real background of like maybe solar flares or meteorite impact on the Earth or something.
Yeah.
And then I'm seeing ICR, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
You know, so real quick, here's the thing with White Jesus. There's a long-standing tradition of basically anywhere where Christianity goes, people depict Jesus as a local. But on the other hand, if you're trying to do something that's like region neutral, you should probably depict Jesus as like a Middle Easterner, because that's where he lived.
Or at least vaguely Mediterranean looking?
Right. So, like, but on the other hand, if you're doing like local religious art for a local, community, then yeah, sure, feel free to follow the tradition of depicting Jesus as a local. Because, I mean, there's also a Chinese Jesus, there's a sub-Saharan African Jesus,
Yeah.
Yeah. There are even places where you can find like Native American Jesus, because there are communities of Native Americans who have been Christian for hundreds of years. In fact, I believe it was the Russian Orthodox Church. It was the first church to translate the Bible into a Native American language. They did it in Alaska with the language Aleut. So
today I learned.
Yep. In fact, there are also a lot of Aleut saints that the Russian Orthodox Church canonized.
Whoa!
Yeah. They the Orthodox Church is pretty cosmopolitan in like ethnicities that just yeah, okay, that guy's a saint now.
I'm gonna have to ask Vadim if there's like Russian or Ukrainian slang for cool that I can start using and just dropping randomly in conversation, because I could say the word good, but I don't know if there's like a slang word for cool. I'm sure there is.
Oh, there almost certainly is. Chris Reese for $5 says, ingredients for my catharsis: videos dunking on YECs, 2 heavy metal. Those are both really good. All right, here we go.
I support both of those.
Let's get this out of the way. Or bad this is going to be.
Looking into dinosaurs for several years.
Yeah, sure. Just fade the audio up. That's great.
And I've found some really cool clues. I'll call them clues today. And
are they blue?
What they did for me, and I hope what they will do for you, is sort of help you to put the big picture pieces together. For example, I mean, this is a big need, I think, in the church, especially with Christians. And as I speak to people on the street and at seminars, I get lots and lots of questions, as you can imagine. And sometimes I get crazy questions.
That should tell you something about the people you're associating with.
Yeah.
If the people you're associating with often ask off-the-walls bonkers questions, and you're like supposed to be a thought leader among them, it probably means you're doing a bad job. Just putting that out there. Because most communities don't have people asking crazy questions about dinosaurs as a part of like their faith life, right? That's not a normal thing. That's the kind of thing that happens when you have a antagonistic, shall we say, relationship with knowledge and scholarship and science. So.
But in general, I had a question from a lady once, and she said, my son Johnny, I'll just call him Johnny, he loves dinosaurs, and he's a 6-year-old guy, and she said, and this is a Christian lady, and she she's got the furrowed brow look, like I'm really in anguish here.
That's weird to me.
Get on with it.
Slow.
He loves dinosaurs, and I want him to love dinosaurs, and if they're part of God's creation, then I want that too. But she said, all the dinosaur books and resources that I can find for him, they all teach things that seem to contradict what the Bible says.
No. What you think the Bible says.
What?
So here's the thing with texts generally, and this isn't just the Bible, this is all texts. Texts are always written by an author who has some intent, but also consumed by a reader who has an interpretation. And even if your interpretation varies from the author's intent, that doesn't make your interpretation of the text wrong unless you're trying to interpret what the author meant as like your stated goal. So if you think the Bible says X, Y, and Z didn't happen or did happen, great. That has no bearing on whether or not they did happen, and also has no bearing on whether or not you're getting it quote-unquote right. So, yeah.
And I already know the Bible's true, and so I don't know what to do for Johnny. What do I do? And I had to say, well, buy our book when it comes out.
Of course,
Oh
the
my
answer involves
God.
give me money. Which probably he said to someone already, while he was already on a trip that he was paid to do with a speaking fee and probably accommodation and travel taken care of too. Which, by the way, I mean, that's reasonable, right? If people want you to take time out of your day to go address them, it's reasonable for you to ask for compensation. I'm not saying that that's not okay. What I'm saying is it's a little bit cringy just after having done all that and someone asks you a question while they're still part of the community paying you to be there to talk to them, for you to basically just say, yeah, give me more money. It's a little distasteful. Anyway.
And it's now out. Creation guide to dinosaurs. We now have.
We should find. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna Google that. We need to see like what we can expect from this. So, ICR creation guide. Oh, spell it right. Guide to dinosaurs. Oh, there's a second edition now.
Oh.
Okay, you can get it on Amazon. The second edition is from 2014. It's got 9 ratings with a 4.5 star rating from all 9 ratings.
Oh, buddy.
Oh, it's currently unavailable though. I have no idea if it'll be back in stock. But is there a
Huh.
Kindle? Nope, just a hardcover. It has really bad CGI dinosaurs on the cover. Like we're talking like this looks like it's straight out of like 1992 CGI. Can you get it? Can you get it from the ICR directly? Yeah, for $17, they'll give you a hardcover ICR guide to dinosaurs. That is something I would be interested in getting, if I'm being honest, but I don't want to give ICR $17 plus probably shipping. So yeah, I don't know.
Go to some secondary markets for that one.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so it's got. Yeah, I can zoom in on the cover. Let's see, we've got an Allosaurus skull, which looks like it might actually just be Ebenezer that AIG has. They've got a Triceratops, a really bad Pachycephalosaurus, a Kentrosaurus, and a T-Rex on the cover. All of them in bad CGI. There's a skeleton that's too blurry for me to make out. Yeah, this looks like something I would want to read for ironic purposes. All right, here we go. I don't recommend any of you give ICR $17, though. Although that is pretty cheap for a hardcover book of any kind. So props to ICR for not price gouging on it.
And I said, if you get a chance, expose yourself to the 5 clues that I'm going to teach. I was teaching at the.
This whole
My
is just
brain.
this is all just literally his preamble to the speech. He's like, "Hey, I told someone to listen to this speech."
And give me
As
money.
part of the speech, yeah, and also give me money. Like, no, dude, just start the speech. Don't tell us how you told someone else to watch the speech that everyone in the audience is already here to watch. You already got them.
So bad.
It's a weird way to start.
At the seminar there, and come visit my talk, and we'll see. And she was able to put the big picture pieces together so that she could go to Johnny and say, "Look, Johnny, there's parts of this book that are trustworthy, and there's other parts of this book this dinosaur book that that don't actually come from science. Instead, they originate from the minds of sinful men, like Chris was saying earlier.
Oh, fun. So she told her son that, hey, science is a liar sometimes, using the actual "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" defense, and therefore setting him up for a potential lifetime of believing in crazy nonsense like anti-vax and anti-mask stuff. This is, because of course this is before 2020 when this is recorded, right? Like you literally just set up a potential hazard to humanity by doing this.
He's literally raising like an Anakin Skywalker right now. What else have the Jedi not told me?
Right. And the thing is, that's one of the reasons that I do this, because we've already talked about how, I do this to help out forming our Earth creationists, but also pseudoscience of any kind, when people believe it, it degrades their trust in science as a whole. And because most people can't be no one can be an expert on enough of science to actually have a really well-informed opinion, most people have to follow expert opinion on most things. And the thing is, if you already have as part of your upbringing that experts are unreliable on huge swaths of science, you're going to be taken in by dangerous nonsense as well as not so dangerous nonsense. Because let's be fair, on its own, there's nothing particularly hazardous about believing the Earth is 6,000 years old and that evolution isn't a thing, right? Your day-to-day life, that's never going to really cause you to, get sick or be injured or anything like that, right? Sure. Per se, young Earth creationism is essentially a harmless belief. But because it's been well established that believing in one conspiracy theory makes you open to more, very few people only believe in one conspiracy theory, it sets you up for more science-based conspiracy theories that are dangerous. Maybe you'll be an anti-vaxxer. Maybe you'll start believing Kent Hovind when he says that eating seeds that will just give you cyanide poisoning will cure or prevent cancer. Those are actual dangerous things that cause harm. Sorry.
It's contrarianism, and that came up this week actually. Like the Paluxy River tracks, which Carl Ball is still probably obsessed with. They became exposed again after having been underwater due to the high drought levels.
I think even new ones were exposed, right? Ones that hadn't been
new
previously.
Ones were exposed.
Yeah.
And the articles coming out were like, hey, these several million years old tracks have been exposed due to the drought, and this one lady named Teresa just replied to several of these news articles going, I'm skeptical about this. And I already knew what she was skeptical about. So I was feeling petty that day, and I'm like, well, Teresa, when you get a paleontology and geology degree, you're free to come back to us with your expert assessment. And some, random trolls like, why don't you give us your expert assessment? And so I replied with an academic paper from credentialed scientists in which this is their field, talking about the Paluxy River tracks in their geologic context. And I'm like, I don't have to, because these guys did it for me.
Right. I just get to accept the scientific consensus. Weird.
You're free to go through this paper and describe how they're wrong, but I don't care because who are you? Right. There are not enough hours in the day for me to obtain degrees in every field of science. Mm-hmm. So when people who study this for a living and have been doing it using proper tools and technology for decades in most cases tell me, hey, this is what we've come to a conclusion on, I'm gonna trust those people over some rando who goes, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. And look, here's the thing. If you still don't want to trust those people, that's okay, but you have to do what Vishanti said. You have to become an expert. You have to get to the same level of understanding that they have in order to contest them. Which is fine, right? Just go do it. That's happened before, right? There have been people who've been disagreed with general consensus of some kind of science and then overturned the consensus science, but they had to be experts to do it, because otherwise they were just going to be ignoring huge swaths of things. One thing that really comes to mind is plate tectonics, right? The guy who proposed it, whose name I can't remember, but no one agreed with him at first. But he was an actual expert in things like geophysics and geology and whatnot. It turns out, he was right. But he wouldn't have been able to do that had he not already known all that stuff about things like geophysics and geology and all that.
And here's a spoiler alert. everybody that's overturned the scientific consensus, we know about them
Mhm.
because it's not common.
Yeah, no, it's very rare. Very, very rare.
So-
For good reason.
You're not gonna be the hero of this particular story, my friend. It's
Well,
gonna take time.
Probably not. All right, here we go.
So that's the big picture. And what we want to do is be able to say with confidence, I know where dinosaurs fit in the Bible's timeline.
The answer is mostly nowhere
Sorry.
except for the birds, but okay.
I know where they fit because I am the king of Dunning-Kruger Mountain.
Basically, unless you're talking about birds, they don't fit anywhere in a literal version of the Bible's timeline. At least. We'll
Yeah.
give that caveat. All right.
And I think that if every Christian could sort of just be exposed to these 5 clues, that we'd all be able to go, oh, that makes sense. It fits.
You can be confident and confidently wrong.
I'll bet that his 5 clues don't actually even make sense. So let's.
I'll bet they don't either.
Yeah,
I'll
let's
take that
see
bet.
what happens. I don't even know at this pace if we're even going to get to them because this guy is like the slowest speaker.
Can we not watch this at like 1.25 or something?
Yeah, actually, we're going to speed it up to
Good
1.25.
grief.
That's what we're going to do.
So I want to see that happen. I want to see the light bulbs come on and the smiles turn
Actually, we're at 1.5. If this is too fast, let me know.
on your faces as we go through and look at the 5 dinosaur clues. Are you ready for the 5 clues?
Oh, and I think it crashed.
Clue number 1 that I've noticed refutes what I was taught, which is that dinosaurs evolved from a non-dinosaur reptile
Yeah, it crashed.
over millions of years
Uh-oh.
ago, through natural processes, step by step. One piece at a time, evolution did it, somehow. And that's what I was taught and told, and that's what I believed, because it's the only origins story to which I have been exposed.
There it is.
But then I got to looking more closely at the anatomy of dinosaurs, and I discovered something.
All right, so we stopped at anatomy of dinosaurs.
Why did he pronounce that like Kent Hovind?
So I don't know, but I suspect that it has to do with something to do with like being trained as a speaker to enunciate carefully and just kind of going overboard with that. Because one of the things is if you like take like public speaking classes and whatnot, like you are trained to like super carefully like really emphasize every single phoneme. So I suspect it's something to do with that. We're currently in the process of bringing the video back, by the way. If I can actually navigate to the correct folder, because I apparently kind of suck at this. Yeah. So let's see. What's everything going to be like?
That's so funny because I don't necessarily recall the emphasis on enunciation when I was taking public speaking, but it's probably been so long that I just kind of internalized it and didn't really think about it.
Yeah. All right.
Like the only things that I took away from that were to do fewer verbal pauses whenever humanly possible.
Yeah, that's a pretty.
It's really difficult for me to make it through certain videos or teachers or speakers when they're just verbal pausing constantly. And I'm like,
Christian
"Did you
lady,
not
and she
prepare this in advance.
Yeah.
Did you not think this particular topic through before you came on? Like, oh.
All right, I'm going to reshare the video with you because I have it back up. And we're also going to like skip ahead a little bit.
But she said, all the resources, I say, well, buy our book when it comes out. Book that
Sorry about this, everybody.
that don't actually come from science. Instead, they originate from the
hi,
minds of sinful men. Dinosaurs evolved. Dinosaurs. Turn on your faces as we go through and look at the 5 dinosaur clues. Are you ready for the 5 clues?
Get on with it.
Clue number 1
Here we go. Clue number 1.
that I've noticed refutes what I was taught, which is that dinosaurs evolved from a non-dinosaur reptile over millions of years ago, through natural processes, step by step. One piece at a time, evolution did it somehow. And
Yes, no.
So basically, okay, I know enough about young Earth creationists to know what clever design as clue 1 is going to be. I will bet a pretty significant sum of money that what he's about to do is shotgun things that are true about dinosaurs, and then with no argumentation whatsoever, simply say that therefore evolution couldn't do it.
I'm gonna see your bet there, and I'm going to raise it with
Ooh.
using the fact that animals are adapted to their environment as proof of design. by a
Ooh,
creator.
yeah. All right. Well, so I'll tell you what. My we'll treat this as I'm betting. Go with 12,000 quatlus.
Okay.
And then you have a side bet on top of that of how much?
You know what? I'm gonna. God, I really just want to throw in like a bar of gold pressed latinum in there. Just
Ooh, a whole bar, huh?
whole bar.
I thought you were
like,
gonna
I'm
go for like
going
3
broke.
strips or something.
No, I'm going for a whole bar. That's
Okay.
how I'm feeling. I'm feeling lucky today.
Remind me, how many strips is it to a bar?
Man, I don't remember.
I'm gonna find this out.
I
Hold
don't
on.
remember the denominations of gold pressed latinum.
Because there's slips, strips, and bars.
Yeah.
Okay, platinum denominations.
One moment, audiences, we calculate the the currency.
We gotta find out,
denominations of
right? Oh, they were
gold-pressed
bricks
platinum.
too, right? Okay, so nominations. Let's see. It doesn't tell me how much is in each. It might not have ever been actually defined in canon because, yeah, I don't think it was ever actually defined. Lame. Star Trek, do better.
Come on, Ferengi, let's
Yeah.
get this under control.
Oh, by the way, do you want to tell anyone any news about Star Trek related nerdery
Mhm.
that you might have shared
You're
with
gonna have to be
me
a little more. What?
recently? That you might have shared with me recently as a screenshot from your phone?
Oh, well, on a whim, I added the Klingon program to my Duolingo app, so I learned the monosyllabic vowels this week.
Yeah. There's 5. Klingon basically has the same pure vowels as Spanish.
And that's why I learned them in about 5 minutes.
Yes, which makes it super easy for most of the
Yeah.
world's languages to learn.
And I was like, man, I know that this is probably going to be the easiest lesson I've ever had, and it's all going to be downhill from here.
Klingon's not that bad. All right, here we go.
That's what I was taught and told, and that's what I believed, because it's the only origins story to which I had been exposed. But then I got to looking more closely at the anatomy of dinosaurs, and I discovered something.
I'm going to put it on the line. Literally no one has simply looked at the anatomy of dinosaurs without already having been convinced of some kind of creationism and come to the conclusion that therefore young earth creationism.
Well,
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
This man is lying to us. I'm willing to put that on the line. This is a lie.
Tesla Ranger says 1 bar equals 20 strips equals 2,000 slips.
Okay, so there's 100 slips to a strip and 20 strips to a bar. What I'm getting. Okay. Nice. Okay, cool. Thank you. I was not willing to look deep enough into Star Trek fake money. Although I do find it interesting that the Star Trek writers realized how boring a post-scarcity society was, and then they just decided to reintroduce scarcity.
It always has amused me that Earth is considered like post-currency society after like the Third World War and all this stuff, and like we don't do stuff for profit like that. And then the Federation starts using credits, and I'm just like, guys.
Okay, so
but, I mean, I get it because other cultures still do. Like,
the in-universe explanation is like when Federation officers need to interact with societies that do use a currency-based economic system, they're given an allotment of Federation credits, which are also used in foreign trade, but aren't generally used internally in the Federation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's basically like a fiat currency just for international use.
Right, and I love the Ferengi just being a total send-up of, like, hyper-capitalist, individualism.
Okay, but to be fair, in Deep Space Nine, they actually get more complicated than that. Because one of the things is, there's that episode where Quark points out that, like, hey, for as much as you guys hate us for our profit-seeking, greedy ways, there's also a bunch of horrible atrocities that you have committed, humans, that we haven't because they don't make money, like genocide and slavery.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, there is something to be said for the fact that if your motive is just to make money, killing your customers is a really bad move.
I will also say that, Quark had a point there because, like, specifically New World colonization and genocide was specifically, like, give us your gold.
Mm-hmm.
Give us
but
your
it wasn't
crops.
Trade us your gold. It was we steal your gold.
We're taking it.
And that's one of the things.
This is mine now.
Yeah, if you look into like the Ferengi have a religion about like how trade needs to be a thing where you bring things to where they're needed, and you get things that those people have in abundance and take them to where they're needed.
Yeah.
It kind of makes the idea of like just straight up stealing, which granted, I mean, plenty of Ferengi still like engage in. But the thing is, it's actually, according to the religious views that were given for Ferengis, against their religion to do it. They're going outside the bounds of what Ferengi are supposed to do in Ferengi society when they do that. So I just find all that's interesting, and props to the Deep Space Nine writing staff for actually turning a joke about capitalism into a nuanced species that actually has good and bad points to say about profit motives.
It's almost like Star Trek is an exploration of humanity.
Weird. All right, we're going to hit play, because this is not supposed to be about Star Trek. We're supposed to be here for the Young Earth creationism.
You told me to bring up Star Trek, and here we are.
Okay, look, I'm not saying that I'm not at fault. I'm just saying we need to go back on track.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
There's no misplaced parts. There's no out-of-position body parts in these bones.
Oh my God.
For example,
What
I
would even be...
went and visited the big famous Diplodocus at the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh recently, and I was really taking a look at these dinosaur bones there.
Yeah.
Had a guy. This is how confused Christians can be. I had a guy come up to me after a dinosaur presentation. He came right down the center aisle.
Look, if you don't bring it back to those bones, I'm going to be pretty upset, dude. Like, what the heck? All right, sorry. Like, just pick a topic and stick to it. Ugh.
And as soon as I was done, he was like the front man of the line, and he wanted to ask his question and make his point. And he said, I understand what you're saying, but I disagree with some part of what you're saying, and I think that you're wrong when you said that dinosaurs may have been on Noah's Ark. That just doesn't fit. And I said, well, how do you explain dinosaurs? Where do you think they fit? How do they fit, in the big picture for you? And he said this to me. He said, I believe Satan created dinosaurs.
Look, I've met people like that, and it's okay. Here's my thing with it, right?
Woo.
If you allow Satan to make dinosaurs, it becomes logically almost impossible to just not say that Satan is actually the creator of the entire universe, including you. So
I'm getting big Demiurge vibes from this.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. For those of you who might not be up on like the history of like first few centuries AD, like religious movements, there were groups of people who were sort of like adjacent to what is now considered Christianity, who thought that like the God of the Old Testament was an evil God who created the down degraded and sinful world of physical material, and that the God of the New Testament was the super spiritual God who emanated all souls and whatnot, and that so the material world was evil, the spiritual world was good, and what basically then later became the Imperial Church was strongly against this idea, and they went with a theology whereby, because of the incarnation, that sanctifies the material universe as opposed to it just being evil. And that's one of the reasons why traditionally Christianity has had a lot of like material aspects to its rituals, like eating, drinking, anointing with oils, water, things like that, right? The idea is supposed to be, by that group that became, the Christian quote-unquote officialdom, that the incarnation sanctifies material things, as opposed to the material things just being irredeemably evil, which is what was believed by their ideological rivals. But you know what? That's way into the weeds of the history of Christian theology in a way that I don't think we really need to get into. So,
About time for a break, though.
It is about time for a break. And Vishanti, I think you might actually be absent once we come back.
Yeah, for a little bit.
Okay. So, guys, it'll be just me for a little bit, and then hopefully Vishanti will come back. And you know what? If you do need the full hour and we just don't come back, then that's okay too. Guys, please do stick with me. Hit like if you haven't, and we are going to an intermission. Okay, I am back. Welcome back to, I guess, well, me. But hey, I'm back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me. Really appreciate it. Do hit like. Vishanti is, of course, currently absent, but hopefully she will be back. Let's see. What else is important? Oh, one thing is, I usually say after my breaks, if you guys are liking this, please make sure you hit like. Also, subscribe if you're not already. And last, of course, there are ways to support the channel down below this video, either with memberships or in the description with the Patreon link. That would be really help because this channel is entirely supported by support from my audience, whether in the form of like advertising revenue, super chats, Patreon, channel memberships, stuff like that. If you decide to join the channel or the Patreon, there's like, I think 10 or something videos that you can watch early. There's a supporter Discord server that's just for people who are supporting the channel. And if that's not stuff that you want to do, that's fine. Just like and share this video, subscribe, and that really helps the channel out. I don't want to take a whole lot of time on that, so here we go. Going back into this with just me, and I added a little bit more to this because, like I said, it's been quite a week with channel stuff, and you guys will hopefully get to see that stuff soon. Here we go.
With a straight face. There's no evidence that the devil can create anything, let alone some creature as specifically and marvelously designed as these were, as we could see from looking at the anatomy of these sauropod dinosaurs.
I will agree. There is no evidence that the devil can create anything, whether you assume Christianity is basically true or not. I can say that that does, in fact, track. I'll let you guys decide whether or not that has any implications for my wider theological views, because I generally don't divulge them.
Now, I just used a big word, so you're going to have to say it out loud. Sauropod, if you would.
Sauropod is literally 3 syllables, dude. It's not a big word.
The sauropods are the ones with the long necks, long tails.
I mean, there's a lot more that it takes to be a sauropod than having a long neck and a long tail. That could describe a lot of things, but I mean, those are pretty characteristic, but sure.
And so just imagine this. I mean, you've got to have support structures to hold this creature suspended.
The non-binary bead says, bring back Vishanti. Look, Vishanti has a very important thing that she needs to get done right now, and that is perfectly fine. If she is done before the end of the show, she will be back. But no guarantees. You know, there are things that are more important than trash-talking creationists on the internet. As much as I make that a priority in my life, I understand there are still things that trump that. So
it won't just fall on the ground like a big puddle of jelly. 30 tons. I mean, that's a lot of weight. Some of these creatures, they were huge, 90 feet long. These kinds of dimensions. And so I'm looking at the hip.
Yeah, I mean, it's all true.
Bone, the hip structure, and I noticed something about the hip. I see that there are a couple of arches in that hip. There's an arch up on top of it. And then
like the iliac crest. That's a pretty universal thing, yeah.
There's another arch here into which the femur bone rests.
Acetabulum, again, for universal, just tetrapod thing. Okay.
And so this heavy animal could support itself on arches. So whenever I see arches.
Okay, but dude, that's literally basal to tetrapoda. That's everybody. You've got these arches, frogs have these arches. Like, if you've got hind limbs and a sacrum, which, I mean, if you have hind limbs, you kind of have to have some kind of sacrum. But, like, if you've got weight-bearing limbs and a sacrum, yeah, that's how it works, dude. That's how humans work, that's how dinosaurs work, that's how lizards work. Everybody has these arches. And yeah, it's because it's structurally sound, but here's the thing. Structural soundness for weight bearing is pretty heavily selected for when you're bearing weight. So I don't know what the point is, but we'll let him keep going.
Arches that support a weight, I'm thinking in terms of like these ancient Roman aqueducts, which were built so well, such clever design in them, that they still stand 2,000 years after they were built.
I mean, parts of them do. The fact that they're not currently carrying water to Rome indicates that parts of them aren't. But yeah, the arch is a sound principle of design. But the thing is, if it provides a selective advantage, then it can be selected for by natural selection. Weight bearing does when you're bearing weight. So also an art like a circular shape is pretty easy to, as far as like for nature, right? Like nature makes rounded things all the time. So I don't know what the point is here.
And so I see this evidence of clever design in the hip structure, that we have an arch to support the body weight on these pillar-like legs. And speaking of those legs, I noticed the knees, and I read a study on these sauropod knees. Pretty interesting, because as the sauropod dinosaur grew bigger and bigger and taller and more massive, he had, okay, so imagine these are the two knee, femur tibia, this is the knee joint. The bigger he got, the heavier he got, the more pressure per square inch of this joint, potentially would.
Okay, so Vadim points out that some aqueducts are still used. That's true. Yeah. There are some functional aqueducts, although the majority of them are not functional. I mean, look, I'm not here to disparage Roman architecture, right? The Romans were really good at building lots of things, including aqueducts. In fact, there are aqueducts where, like, the downgrade slope was, like, a tiny, tiny amount over the entire course of the thing to bring in water from ridiculously far away areas. And they did things like, carefully covered over water channels to prevent water loss from evaporation. Like, look, Romans made some awesome stuff. Not here to deny this.
Damage the joint. So you have to have a cushion big enough to take care of the weight. So the clever design here, the older the dinosaur got, the broader that, the bigger his knee got. So his knee grows in proportion to his body weight.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, if you look through geological history, the earliest sauropods are relatively small compared to, like, late things like that you get in, like, the Cretaceous, like, like titanosaurs, right? Like, no one's saying that Dreadnoughtus is the first sauropod. When you actually start with, like, Sauropodomorpha, you get much more modestly sized animals, like Plesiosaurus, which was not that much taller than a human and was walking around on 2 legs, not even 4. And then you get a series of transitions from these basal sauropods, which, by the way, is coming up in a video in I think about a month or so, where I go through and actually talk about transitional sauropodomorph dinosaurs all the way to sauropods. But, like, there's a nice transition of things getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, this guy is talking about Diplodocus, but as far as, like, the history of sauropods go, Diplodocus is actually fairly small. And the whole way through, you see increasing what are called Gravoportal adaptations. Gravoportal just means, like, supporting a lot of weight. And yeah, like, none of this is particularly, like, innovative in terms of, like, the history of the organism, right? You're just talking about the actual size of the knee. And the thing is that everyone agrees, even people at ICR agree, that mutations can cause changes to the size and shape of parts of the body. So if they're changed so that they're bigger, and an animal that is big now has, less wear and tear on its limbs, which makes it able to survive longer so it can reproduce more, that's all it takes, right? Like, this is not, like, some kind of thing that's impossible for evolution to do.
That doesn't just happen. That's got to be built in with clever design. So we see that in the.
No, it doesn't. That's a smooth gradient that can evolve very easily. All it takes is, 1, creatures better adapted to their environment, reproduce more, and 2, mutations can occur that change the aspect or the trait in question, which is obviously true. It doesn't have to be designed.
Sauropod's knees. And this is one of the most spectacular examples of clever design in a dinosaur of any kind, and that is the amazing holes and grooves. It's kind of hard to see.
It's especially hard to see when your video quality is so low, but to be fair, this guy didn't record it, so I can't criticize him for it.
I guess under these greenish tints, but you can see these grooves, these raised ridges, hollowed out areas. There's even some areas that are hollow inside, not just gouged out.
That's true, but also that's true of basically Archosauria, right? So Archosauria is the group that includes, like, crocodilians, their relatives, dinosaurs, their relatives, pterosaurs like Pterodactylus and Quetzalcoatlus and Pteranodon, their relatives. This entire group had, from the very beginning, what's called a highly pneumatic skeleton. Now, you might think of that in terms of, like, pneumatic pistons, and it's basically the same thing. It means full of air, right? Difference between piston, hydraulic pistons full of water from, hydros, and pneumatic from pneuma, which genitiform pneumatos or pneumatos, depending on what convention you're going with for pronunciation. But that means breath or air or spirit. So Archosaur starts out with a lot of air sacs, but the thing is, even the air sacs themselves aren't a particularly like an incomprehensible adaptation within reptiles, because all organisms have hollow spaces and they have a respiratory system which can itself, through relatively simple changes in the like development of an embryo, create outpocketings, right? Because one of the basic or two of the basic commands in embryological development that your regulatory genes can give to a developing embryo are one, fold, and two, grow. So all that has to happen is you have an extra fold command that is followed by a grow command, and suddenly you have an outpocketing of whatever organ that is. And the respiratory tract can be these things. And if that outpocket provides some additional advantage, even if it's just weight saving, well, then that can be selected for. And so it's really not that. So on the one hand, it's an amazingly cool way that sauropods reduce their weight, right? They have extremely hollow bones for their size, and they have huge cervical air sacs that run all the way up through their neck, which is really cool. But on the other hand, it isn't something that we can't understand how it could have come about naturally. So,
Does this thing still work? Woohoo! Now, why would you have hollowed out areas and raised ridges?
weight savings, mostly.
And it reminds me, of course, of my bicycle, which has hollowed out areas. Now, you could have just a solid metal disc for your chainring, but you don't. Why do you have holes? And
in the chainring, it's for the spokes of the gear to connect to the chain, because that's how we use a gear with a chain. Like, you literally can't use the chain if you just have a smooth chain. This is not a good analogy. The reason that bike chains have holes is not at all the same as the reason that sauropod vertebrae are full of air pockets. Like, this is really dumb.
strengthen areas of strength and areas of, why do you put holes in the chainring? Anyone? Yeah, to save weight.
No! I mean, it does save weight, but it's so that the gear can interface with the chain. Like, this is the very basics of how you have mechanical gear-based interactions with other objects. Gear teeth have to interlock with something. If you have a chain, the chain is going to have holes for the gear teeth. What is happening right now? Oh my goodness, this is worse than I was expecting. This is really bad.
And why are these tubes? One reason these tubes are hollow.
Fernando Catechai says, if you ever do a video or series of vids on God rules, I'd like to see you debunk his Tartaria and free energy Nikola Tesla BS. So, Fernando, what I would like for you to do is send me some of those, because last time I looked through his stuff, I didn't see those in particular, but I do actually have a series on his video. I think it's just a 2-part series, but 2 videos on his video about dragons being real. So if you want to see me tackle some of the God rules stuff, I already got that for you. So, all right, here we go.
To save weight. So we have hollow spaces in the bones, and
Okay, so he's right about why the hollow spaces in the bone are there for sauropods, but wrong about why they're there for bike chains. So, I mean, you got it half right, dude. Half a point, I guess. Half a point to Slytherin. I don't know what house this guy would be in.
raised ridges, it's all to save weight. And if you look at other dinosaur bones, and I'll show you a vertebra, these are the backbones of a hadrosaur dinosaur in a minute, you'll see that they're more like solid bricks. And that would not work. If you take a bunch of vertebrae that are like the solid brick.
Are you talking about the centrum? Because sauropod centra, which, by the way, the centrum is like the disc part of a vertebra. Like, sauropod centra aren't like just hollow rings. Like, there's also reasonably solid bits of bone. We'll see what he's talking about. Oh, he'd be in Hufflepuff? Man, harsh on Hufflepuff.
And stack them end to end for a sauropod dinosaur, you're going to get a thick brick neck, and what's it going to do? It's going to fall on the ground, and the only thing he'll be able to eat is a big pile of worms.
I mean, worms are good food, but like, there's a lot of animals that eat worms. But then again, I guess to be fair, sauropods are probably not well adapted to feed on worms. So, okay.
And then he would die. And that would be bad, because then he wouldn't be able to evolve.
I mean, yes, if you die before you can reproduce, that lineage is done.
No, that's a joke. He didn't. The point is, natural processes, step-by-step processes, could not have built this creature, because all the body parts, the the hip joint, the hip arch, the widening knee, and the special raised ridges and hollowed spaces in the vertebrae, both tail and neck, and the small size of his head. Look at that teeny head in comparison with the, well, for example, a T-Rex. Big giant head in comparison to the vertebrae of a T-Rex, but not the sauropods, a little tiny head. Can you imagine a T-Rex head stuck on the end of this? Now that
Yes, I can imagine it.
would be something I would expect if natural processes were experimenting
Why? Okay, look. Evolution, one, doesn't have foresight, but it has basically like current sight, right? So the idea with natural selection is whatever does better at reproducing in the current environment and then having, offspring that then themselves survive to reproduce, right? Like if you are really awesome at reproducing, but for some reason your offspring are sterile, well, that's not going to help in the long run. But so other than that, right, we're talking about organisms that survive, reproduce, and reproduce more than their neighbors who reproduce. That's what's selected for. If a mutation makes that harder to do, like an overly big head, it will be immediately selected against. There won't be that morphotype won't persist, right? No, and if you have an organism that's continually increasing in size, but its head doesn't need to increase in size itself, then any mutation that caused that to happen will tend to be selected against, and any mutation that keeps the head at a reasonable size for the rest of the anatomy will tend to persist. So basically, for this guy to be right, that evolution couldn't explain this, or we should expect T-Rex headed sauropods for some reason, what would actually have to be the case is there wouldn't be any selection. Organisms would just vary wildly and unconstrainedly in their morphology. But there's no good reason to think that that's how anything works. So this guy is just using a straw man version of evolution to then say, because dinosaurs exist, therefore no evolution. DM Wing asks about continuous environmental tracking. Okay, DM Wing, one, you're a channel member, so you already have access to my entire series about continuous environmental tracking. Or for those of you who aren't, stay tuned to this channel, subscribe if you haven't, put on notifications so you're notified, because in the coming weeks, that is going to be, I don't think it's my next series, but it's the one after that. I think the next series I have after the Stephen Meyer one is a 2-part series about spirit science, because, I mean, screw that guy. He is an admitted abuser who did something to someone that rhymes with the word grape, like the fruit. And he admitted to it on a recorded call. So I am not a fan of Jordan from Spirit Science, but I did do a 2-part series about one of his things, about like the frequency of your consciousness or something. But then the series after that should be about continuous environmental tracking. So there we go. Liz D says, if you aren't a member, what's wrong with you? Well, not being a member. Liz, it starts at only $1.99 a month. All right, here we go. Also, on Tuesdays, members have an easy and relatively inexpensive way to make me drink by just super chatting any of the kaiju emojis, which are Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. And if you send any of those in a super chat, I do take a drink on Tuesdays. Okay, here we go.
and trying to put together a dinosaur. Instead, we see dinosaur, each kind, each one fully formed, each one with all the parts put together all at once in appropriate proportion.
But we don't, though. We have protosauropods in the non-sauropod sauropodomorphs, like we talked about Plateosaurus, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. Which, I mean, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, so I'm not going to go into each one. But it's just a lie to say that sauropods appear on the scene, fully formed sauropods, no antecedents within Dinosauria. Dinosauria doesn't have any antecedents. It's literally not true. Inkboy, for €5, says, if you go foraging for mushrooms and collect Phallus impudicus in your sack, you might get special phenomena, which is called AIG. You know what? So this is not an official drinking stream, but here's the thing. This beverage has alcohol in it, so I'm going to take a drink anyway. Thank you very much for the super chat, Inkboy. I really do appreciate it, because like I said, the reason this channel is still on the internet. I was going to say on the air, but that's not technically true. Anyway, the reason this channel still exists is because of support from super chatters, from channel members, patrons, stuff like that. So, and I really appreciate it because you guys don't owe me anything, right? Literally no one is obligated to give me money. But you do because you want to support. And I can't tell you how honored I am for that to be the case. So, anyway, here we go.
Lightweight head. He even had a teeny tiny brain to save weight, so that when he lifts
I mean, yeah, kind of, basically.
his neck, he lifts that tiny head. He doesn't have to lift very much weight. He even had an auxiliary brain near his hip.
That is not true. So, one, the auxiliary hip brain thing is a thing that was hypothesized about stegosaurids, which is the group of animals that includes animals like Stegosaurus, obviously, but also like Kentrosaurus and their relatives. Also, by the way, I really like Kentrosaurus to the point that when it was time for me to buy my little nephew a Stegosaurid toy, I went with Kentrosaurus. But anyway, there was a nerve ganglion there, but it was probably not anything analogous to a brain. Instead, it was probably just a processing point for various reflexive actions. And the same thing actually happens in humans. Oh, hey, Sal. Sal is here. Everyone say hi to Sal. Sal is one of my favorite young Earth creationists. He and Rebecca, Bread of Life, are like at the top of my list for like young Earth creationists that I would go hang out with IRL. So I'm very glad to have you here. So anyway, a lot of the reflexive actions that you take as a human, right? So like if you touch something super hot, pull your hand right away. Often you pull your hand right away before you even detect the fact that you've been burned. That's because that action doesn't actually have to travel all the way to your brain. It travels to your spine, which processes that immediately at the spine and makes you jerk your hand away before you even can process in your brain that you were just burned. The same thing was probably true for stegosaurids. And so they probably had reflex actions that traveled to the hip and then went right back out to the limbs and tail. Now, this might have involved things like defensive actions with the so-called thagomizer, which is the spiky bit at the end of stegosaurid tails, which, by the way, is a term that was invented by the Far Side cartoons, which is a fun fact. There was a Far Side cartoon that said there was a caveman pointing at a picture of a stegosaurus, and he said, "This is called a thagomizer after the late Thag was killed by one." Oh, and I think we have Vishanti joining back up. Welcome, Vishanti. Let me just finish this quick story. And so paleontologists just liked the cartoon and went with it. So now the spiky bit at the end of Stegosaurid tails is called a thagomizer. Vishanti, how are you? I can't hear you. Hopefully, we'll be back soon in an audible form. Oh,
Yeah, let me try that.
okay. You are now audible, although you're a little bit quiet.
Really?
Yeah,
Weird.
a little bit. Yeah, I'll turn you up on my end. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
All right.
I'm eating the mic.
So yeah, this is not a big sauropod thing. It's more of a stegosaurid thing. But
So
yeah.
how far did you get in the last 27 minutes?
I don't remember where we are or where we were, but I definitely got farther than we would have if you were here. Not that that's a bad thing, because it just means that, there wasn't as much input. Just me. So, but we still have an hour and 24 minutes left of this video.
So we'll be doing this till the end of the year. Got it.
Yeah, probably.
All right.
All right. All right, here we go.
Because remember, sauropod hips are awesome. Love those hips. So he could actually stand there with these pillar-like legs for who knows how long, maybe an hour, and just by craning his neck, scientists have reconstructed the range of motion of sauropods, and he could eat the leaves on this tree, over here on this tree, and over here, and he could stand there.
I blame Vishanti entirely for that.
I regret nothing.
You know what? That's fair. Where the guy couldn't even get right who it was that was supposed to have like a hip brain. Here we go.
Dear.
I am disconnected.
No.
I don't know why. Okay, I think we are back. That's good. Yeah, basically, my OBS just disconnected hard for a while. I don't know why, but I paused this as soon as possible, and we were mostly just scrubbing through this to get back to where we were. So hopefully everything is fine now. I am very sorry about that. That's actually like the worst disconnect that I've had in a very long time. So yeah, sorry about that. But you guys didn't miss much because I didn't say much. But welcome back, Vishanti, in case people didn't hear that.
So,
What's up is this guy. Here we go.
I know.
And trying to put together a dinosaur. Instead, we see dinosaur, each kind, each one fully formed, each one with all the parts put together all at once in appropriate proportion.
But that's the thing. We literally don't. There are transitional fossils for any group of dinosaurs that you care to name. You want to find transitional sauropods? We got them. You want to find transitional thyreophorans, which is like the stegosaurids and the ankylosaurs and whatnot? We got them. You want to find transitional groups within theropoda? Yeah, we got them. You want to find primitive versus advanced neo-ornithischians? We got them. We got things like Herrerasaurus, which is very basal in ornithischia. Then we get like later neo-ornithischians like marginocephalians. Like, we've got all of the things. Transitional forms within Dinosauria are super abundant. Like, you can trace Neo-Ornithischia basically all the way from very basal biped ornithischians that barely even have a predentary bone, all the way to like super advanced Triceratops. Like, it's not that hard to do. You have to lie to people to say that these forms don't exist. Sorry to just dump you in the deep end, Vishanti, into dinosaur anatomy.
That's okay. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Here we go.
Lightweight head. He even had a teeny tiny brain to save weight, so that when he lifts his neck, he lifts that tiny head. He doesn't have to lift very much weight. He even had an auxiliary brain near his hip.
That's where we left off.
Because remember, sauropod hips are awesome.
But it was Stegosaurids that had the ganglion there, and like we talked about, wasn't sauropods. So, I mean, you're just going to the thing is, as far as dinosaurs are concerned, like, to be a dinosaur, there are no dinosaurs that are less similar than sauropods and stegosaurids, right? Because they're on complete opposite branches of the dinosaur tree. The first branch within Dinosauria that is broadly accepted is the branch between Sauroschia, which is sauropods and theropods, so that's the long neck guys and the big two-legged bitey guys, and Ornithischia, which is the ones who tend to have beaks until birds evolve. So that's like your ceratopsians like Triceratops, your stegosaurids like Stegosaurus, your ankylosaurids like Ankylosaurus, things like that. That's on the Ornithischian side. So, like, you're just conflating vastly different groups of dinosaurs. So yeah, this is just bad.
Of those hips. So he could actually stand there with these pillar-like legs for who knows how long, maybe an hour, and just by craning his neck, scientists have reconstructed the range of motion of sauropods, and he could eat the leaves on this tree, over here on this tree, and over here, and he could stand there for an hour or more just standing and eating leaves.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, that's a pretty good, and of course, I mean, it's coming from an actual scientific reconstruction and paper. But yeah, that's basically what's called the feeding volume, is the area in front of an animal that can be used for eating. And yeah, unsurprisingly, sauropods had gigantic feeding volumes. That's kind of the point.
And how efficient, because he doesn't have to move his body. He doesn't have to spend much energy to go get all the food that he needs. Of course, assuming he's living in a tropical and lush environment where there's plenty of foliage to be had.
It's foliage, but, you know.
Man, that's one of my, like, irrational trigger buttons. It's like, foliage. It's like, no!
He didn't even say
Foliage.
foliage. He said foliage.
Foliage is the corollary to that one.
Okay. Look, here's the thing, right? Lots of people have things like speech impediments and whatnot, and I'm not, like, going to get on you for that. But this guy clearly doesn't. If you want to give it a talk where you're just purporting for you to be like the expert, and you don't have a medical condition, get the words right. It's that simple. Because if you don't, then it's very easy to conclude that you don't know what you're talking about. And of course, like I said, that's excluding people with enunciating correctly. That's fine. You do your best. But this is not one of those guys. This guy doesn't have a stammer. He doesn't have a lisp or anything like that. It's foliage, not foliage or foliage or any of those other things.
Well, the last and probably the most spectacular example, in my opinion, of clever design in dinosaurs is the design of a dinosaur egg. So here I am holding a dinosaur egg.
I have dinosaur eggs in my refrigerator.
So do I.
Because in the U.S. they wash off the coating of chicken eggs, so you have to refrigerate them. Which on the one hand means that you're less likely to get fecal contamination in your eggs, but on the other hand it means they don't last as long and you have to refrigerate them. So, Personally, I think it would just be easier to wash them off at home if you're worried about fecal contamination on chicken eggs, but I'm not in charge of the U.S. egg supply.
At a rock shop that happened to find on the side of the road in South Carolina.
Okay, this is a thing about rock shops on the side of the road that I have experienced personally. If you go into them, do not take everything at face value. Because last time I went into one, which was around the Arizona-New Mexico border, there were plenty of authentic fossils, but there were also plenty of very, very inauthentic fossils. So do your research and all that. And also I'll give my quick spiel about private ownership of fossils, which is to say that if you can find a fossil that's a couple $100 or less, chances are that's not a very research significant fossil, and so do what you want, it's up to you. But if you're bidding millions of dollars on a fossil, that's a fossil that should belong to science. And I would suggest that you not buy it unless you're going to immediately donate it to a museum or other institute of higher learning. But if you still insist on just straight up purchasing such a fossil, at least will it to such an institution.
Yeah, I'm 100% against people owning artifacts like this in their private collections. That should be in a museum of its country of origin.
Generally, I agree, but also there are things does every arrowhead that you find need to be in a museum? Probably not.
No, but I'm talking about, for instance, the definitely not Montezuma's headpiece that's attributed to Montezuma should not be in the freaking Netherlands or wherever the hell. It should be freaking in Mexico. And this excuse of, it's too fragile to transport. Well, it wasn't when you stole it.
Yeah. Yeah. As a general rule, I would also prefer that things stay roughly in the area that they're found. I don't want to get super into what governments have legitimate authority over what things, because that's way more political than I'm going to get. But yeah, I generally agree. Now, is every dinosaur egg research important to research? Yeah, probably not. You can probably find a few dinosaur eggs that are reasonable to sell, but it's a continuum problem, right? How important does a fossil have to be before it's not appropriate for you to own it? I don't have a hard answer to that.
Because if there's a bajillion eggs, you don't have to keep all of them in one place like that. That's fine. But for instance, Egyptian kings should have their artifacts not sitting in the British Museum. I'm sure you saw that meme that's why are the pyramids in Egypt? It's because the British Museum couldn't transport
Yeah, they
them.
were too heavy to transport to the British Museum, yeah.
Too heavy to transport.
It's literally the only reason.
Oh, never stop dunking on the British Museum.
Although I would still love to go there, to be honest.
I will say I've been to the V&A before and it was amazing. And I quite enjoyed my trip there, but it doesn't change my opinion that there's a lot of stolen artifacts.
It reminds me of that scene in Black Panther where Killmonger walks into the museum. And he just takes back all the Wakandan artifacts.
Yes! God, that was one of the most based movies ever. She's like, this belongs to She's like, oh, you paid for it?
No.
Killmonger's so based. I love him. Killmonger was right in some things.
Yeah, Killmonger was one of the best Marvel villains because he had motives that made sense as opposed to to kill half of all life. Dude, you have all the Infinity Stones. You could just double resources. No.
Right? Right?
I
And-
choose.
I mean,
I
even
choose no.
look, even Doctor Strange said like, "Oh, so genocide then? Like, you have all this unlimited power, and he just chose genocide? Like, really?" So I'm glad at least he had some sense about it. But
And the
yeah,
non-binary
Killmonger.
beat points out
Oh
Killmonger
god,
is sexy AF. There you go.
indeed. And Museum Bay was his best look. And like, listen, I was all the way with him up until they made him cross the moral event horizon with, "We're just gonna go do violence across the planet." I was like, okay, Eric, I'm gonna stop you there. Stop you right there.
Well, that's the thing. That's what makes him the villain, is that
Yeah.
he takes his, like, you have legitimate complaints, but your solutions are crossing the line.
Right, and it was one of those things where it's a very, very literal study on generational trauma and things like
Mhm.
that. So obviously, you're not meant to sympathize with him at that point. But it's like, bro, we've invested in this guy like the whole movie, and then you just flip it on us like that. Come on.
No. All right, here we go. Let's hear more about Dinosaur Eggs instead of Killmonger.
And I saw this. I was like, that's an interesting looking rock. What is it? And the placard said, dinosaur egg. And I said, oh, great. I could buy this, and then I could bring it to talks when I speak to audiences, and I'll show them what a real dinosaur egg looks like. And then I turned it over, and the price tag said $400.
Is your speaking fee really that much lower than $400? That isn't a good investment.
My God. Well, if they take up a love offering at least a church and a half, he'll be all right.
Right? Which I am not against. It's fair to compensate your speakers. I ask people to compensate me if they just out of the blue say, "Hey, can you just like talk to me on your own or something?" Like, maybe, but like,
No.
me a little something.
Right. It's like, do all this free labor for me. No. Just no.
So I put it right back down. I don't have $400, so let me at least take a quick picture, and I can go from there. So we have the picture. And by the way, I told that story in California a couple years ago, and I got a big, heavy box in the mail about a month later, and this man, who's now a friend of mine, had gone to my talk and heard me tell that story, and I eventually opened the box.
Wait, you gave out your address at a talk?
Oh.
What's happening?
Then again, this looks like it was filmed before like the internet age took off to the point of like doxing being a thing. Because I mean, look at the aspect ratio.
I guess, but yeah, okay, maybe at that point it was still reasonable for you to give out your like home address.
I mean, look, Kent Hovind was putting people's names, addresses, and phone numbers in his slides, and to this day still has.
That's true. My goodness. Oh, by the way, there's a fair chance that he just had stroke number 9. So I don't think Kent Hovind is much longer for this.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Now look, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose it, but I've seen the footage, and yeah.
But also 9.
Well, that's because he himself has estimated that he's already had 8.
8
Mhm.
strokes.
Mhm.
My man.
Yeah, it's time to go see a
Something is
doctor.
going on with you.
Yeah, Ken, if you watch this, which you probably won't, go see a doctor. Not that I care about you, I don't, but like, holy crap, dude.
Man, look, herbal supplements aren't going to help this.
No. Nor are cyanide seeds.
No.
Actually, Bent asked me the other day, he was like, what are we going to do with Kent with Bent when he dies? I'm like, I don't care about speaking ill of Kent Hovind after he dies. As far as I'm concerned, we keep going.
As I've said multiple times to multiple people, especially during the height of COVID deaths due to people being anti-vax, if you don't want people to speak ill of the dead, tell them not to be complete douchewads when they're alive.
What was it? Guy in a chair says, really, where is the footage of this? So here's the thing. Kent Hovind took the footage down. It is still available in a few places. I don't know if I'm comfortable with sharing exactly where to find them right now because, Kent doesn't want them public for obvious reasons. And I think I still currently have enough respect for him as just being a human that I'm not sure that I want to promote the places where they're still available. So that's a decision of mine that might change, but if it does, I will let you know. So at this moment, I'm not completely comfortable with explaining where to find that footage. And also, a lot of the footage isn't in places that are public. But I will say that it was during his Whack an Atheist this past week where he was going after Atheist Junior.
Wait, he had one midstream?
Oh, yeah, it was on camera.
Oh, child.
Yeah. It was
Oh.
it was rough to watch. And
That's awkward.
look, as much as I dislike Kent, because, he's a domestic abuser who sells poison to cancer patients, even for me, I was like, I'm not really super comfortable watching this.
Dude, that's aggressive.
Yeah, it was. Look, I actually kind of regret having it in my brain. I don't suggest that you put it in your brain, honestly. So, all right, here we go.
And I was like, what is this, a bomb? Who sent this? And it had a little note, and it said, every creation researcher needs to have his own dinosaur egg. And he bought me a nice, big, juicy one.
That's what she said.
So I keep it at the Institute for Creation Research in Dallas, where I work. By the way, our website is phenomenal, and I'll be pushing that.
Your website is phenomenal. Dude, I've been to the ICR website. It's look, just on a basic like user experience standpoint, it's not phenomenal. You guys need to hire a UX team. So Icarus asked if I could ask Atheist Junior if he's willing to give me the video. Look, Atheist Junior and I are in contact. We talk probably more often than most people think. He hasn't decided what he's going to do with the footage because he does have it. So I think he might eventually make it public. So go follow Atheist Junior if you don't already. I don't know what he's going to do with the that footage in particular, but he and I have already talked about it, along with a few other people. He's talked about it with like Dr. Dan and like Erica and a few people you guys don't really know. Also Jackson Wheat. So, because I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of us talk in the background. All right, here we go.
And mentioning it to you several times because we have so many resources on this website, icr.org, and they're there for you. They're there to give you answers to some of these questions. Imagine this.
Okay.
This is your task as a clever designer.
Yeah.
You can put anything you want in this machine, but it must fit in your hand. Or if you have small hands, then use two of them.
Is this okay? Is this just about to be embryology is cool, therefore God? Is that what we're getting? Because that's what it sounds like. All right, let's find out.
You can put peanut butter in it. You can put Lego blocks. Whatever you want to put in there. But whatever you put in there has to turn itself into a dinosaur.
Okay.
And that dinosaur that you just
Can I put a dinosaur zygote in there? Because that's what nature
See, why
tends to
not?
do. Yeah, okay, I'll put a dinosaur zygote in there. That'll be easy.
cleverly designed has to be able to hatch out of that egg, eat, consume, grow, and make its own eggs with dinosaurs in those.
Do you think this guy knows that personal incredulity isn't an argument?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
This is unbelievably complicated.
Yeah, that's fair. And
This machine called the dinosaur body. Clever design is frankly, the only explanation in town that.
well, I mean, except for evolution, because you haven't at all argued why natural selection, genetic drift, sexual selection, and mutation aren't sufficient. Like, this entire thing has just been literally, it's cool, therefore God. But that's not an argument. Like, those two things don't follow.
Has any credibility when it comes to explaining this this dinosaur egg. Wow. And out of that little egg hatches a cute little baby dinosaur.
We were talking about sauropods, but this is clearly not a sauropod, and it's instead a hadrosaur. And I think I think it's in Montosaurus annectens. I'm not positive, because, I mean, the picture quality is terrible, and I'll be honest, I'm not actually an expert, despite the fact that people think that I am. But yeah, I don't know why we're transitioning from one taxon to a very, very, very different one, but sure.
You know, you can use him as your pet, and then he grows up to become a 45-foot long hadrosaur, and even though he eats plants, he probably would stomp your kids to death, so that would be bad. So let's not.
What is happening?
What?
Yeah, don't have an elephant as a household pet is also good advice. Okay. Yeah. Big animals can crush a small human. Got it. Okay, whatever. I don't understand the rhetoric here, but sure, whatever.
Not have him as a pet, but he did. He grew big.
Yeah, that's
big
true.
hadrosaur. So, you know, this is what we should have been expecting all along when we just read Genesis 1:25. It says, "And God made the beasts of the earth." If anything qualifies.
Okay, we're going to read this whole thing, and then we're going to see where in it we expect to find specifically dinosaurs. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. I don't know how we get from there to anything that isn't currently extant. Do you, Vishanti?
Listen, you know what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna delve into the Hebrew and start telling you what means what, so...
I mean, we've got a few minutes. If you want to do that. I mean, unless you already...
do that?
Well, do you have it already, like, known? Or would you have to, like, pull it up? Because we probably don't have time for you to pull it up and, like, go through, like, Hallett and what.
I mean, the thing is, like, you've got beast. That word is, like, behemoth. Yes, like behemoth. It's like beast.
Yeah.
And you have to explain why there's a difference between beasts and cattle, or at least the word the King James version used for cattle. There's a difference between bovidae and, like, dinosaurs and elephants and hippos and whatever the heck else. And things that creep on the earth. It's like, okay, but...
Okay, actually, here's some homework for Vishanti. I'm interested to know whether the word underlying cattle there in the Hebrew specifies bovine or bovidae.
What verse is that one?
Genesis 125. Or, because I renamed the Pentateuch, Beginnings 125.
Okay.
Yeah. Because in case you guys don't know, I have renamed all 5 books of the Torah for English because I don't like that many of the books are based on, like, Latin for no particularly good reason. So,
I mean, you just do what we did and name them after the first significant word of a passage, so...
Nah, I went with thematic. So I went with beginnings, which is also, you know, first significant word. But then after beginnings comes GTFO. Then it's priest stuff, right? Then it's
well, it's not in Hebrew, but okay.
No, this is my renaming in English.
Oh, that okay.
Then it's the Latu Electric Boogaloo. And then what was my last one?
For Deuteronomy, I thought it was just law.
Oh no, that was the Latu Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah,
so
Electric Boogaloo, because Numbers
am I
is
missing?
in the desert. It's like
oh yeah, that was census. Census. I called it census.
Census, yeah.
Because that's how it starts. To be fair.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it was.
I mean, and the thing is, like, if you want to go with Genesis 125, that it just says, and God made the living things of the earth. Hayat. It just means a living thing, but it's in a like weird feminine plural. So, living things of the earth. It doesn't even say beasts there. Like, the word used for livestock is behemoth. So that behemoth is like the word for just beast, like behemoth, because yeah.
So yeah, I want to make sure first I get this right. My new English words for the first 5 books in the Bible: beginnings, GTFO, then it's census,
pre-stuff.
Oh, pre-stuff. Yeah, sorry. Then it's. You know what? There's vodka in this drink. I'm just gonna hit play.
As a beast of the earth, I would think that a dinosaur would. Big beast.
Cool.
Well, if you say that in the English,
After
but if
its
you read it in the
kind.
Hebrew, it just says living things, like hayat.
But
It's
God
also a
made.
feminine singular, like the living thing.
That's odd.
So, yeah, it's Vayash Elohim et Hayat. The
Yeah,
beast,
it's not.
or the life
It's not
thing.
Hayot, huh? So it is singular.
Nope. It's Hayat.
Interesting. That is weird, actually.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, you guys need to do some reading here. The same thing with livestock. It says and ha behema, the behema.
Well, actually, we're
So
gonna.
it's talking about like it says it made the hayat haaretz laminah.
Living thing of the earth.
Yeah, the living thing of the earth to its kind, and ha behema laminah. So the behema according to its kind.
I'm actually
It's
kind of
kal,
impressed with
remes,
myself that I got that so quickly, because my
mean,
Hebrew sucks.
And then the last part is it's kal remes hadama lamina.
So there's a quick thing I want to point out, which is kind of cool, which is one, the Arabic and Hebrew feminine singular ending, feminine plural ending, and masculine plural ending are all cognates, which is cool, except outside of words referring to humans, Arabic almost never uses any of them. And it's really annoying.
Just because for completeness
Okay,
sake.
okay, to be fair, it actually does.
Vayar Elohim kitov, and saw Elohim kitov that it was good.
To be fair, Arabic actually does use the feminine singular ending a lot for feminine nouns, whether human or not. But like plural endings, Arabic at some point was just like, you know what? Instead of having a regular plural suffix, what if we just change the internal vowels and arrangements of the consonants? But we don't do it in a regular way. We do it where you just have to memorize it for every single individual word. And it's like, you don't have to. And the Arabic was just like, no, we're going to do it though. All right, thanks. And so now you get the system in Arabic called broken plurals, where you can't predict the plural form of most words from the singular form. But that's almost every word in Arabic that doesn't refer to a human. It's very annoying if you're trying to learn Arabic.
This is one of those things that I tend to really dig in my heels on when it comes to translation. Is there's a way to translate things into other languages while maintaining the integrity of the original. And the King James, I feel like, in order to get the point across, it sacrifices some of the original textual integrity. So, like, here, it's not using the plural forms of those nouns. It's talking about, like, a category of something. And it would be more true to the textual intent to use that singular form, because when people start using plurals that aren't there, they start, jumping off into wild, like, theological tangents that just you can't really support them. So when it says the beast of the earth according to its kind, the livestock according to its kind, there's a different idea there than beasts.
Yeah.
Because then people start thinking beasts, that's a whole type of different kinds of beasts. Like, no, it's a group in and of itself, like that.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna wrap it up right now. Vishanti, do you have anything that you want to plug before I tell people what's coming up soon on the channel?
No, just the continual procrastination of my channel stuff, and I'm in con crunch mode. And to answer Nathaniel Gray's question, I'm going to Dragon Con in Atlanta. So,
well, there you go. Now you've told all the creepy stalkers where to find you.
That's okay, because there's going to be at least 20,000 people there, so good luck.
All right. Let's see. Today's the 27th, so let's look ahead. The 30th, we have Kent with Bent 90, which is going to be called Kent Tales. Woohoo! That's already scheduled, so you can look at that. There's a screen, there's a thumbnail for it. I spent time specifically, like, painting out Scrooge McDuck's like a cheek ruff, so that Kent Hovind's face looks more natural there. So please do go ahead and set a reminder for that. Then on Thursday the 1st, we have the final episode of the Stephen Meyer series coming out. I don't know what's happening the third. It might just be the sequel to this, because, you know, we still have an hour and 19 and a half minutes left of this video, Vishanti.
Oh,
I know.
boy.
Like you said, we're going to be here for the rest of the year. And probably and then some. Let's see. So then comes the 6th, which is going to be another Kent with Bent. That'll be 91. I don't have a title for it yet. Sorry. The 8th will probably be a one of my supercuts, and will be the supercut about the pastor from, like, I think it was Pace in Arizona. I did like a 4-part series on him. The supercut should be coming out there. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes or something. So DM Wing says, "Dinosaur's knees, I have you now." Thank you very much, DM Wing. I really appreciate the
An
super chat.
orangutan.
Yes, the orangutan is. That's actually a really good emoji. I like that.
Yeah.
And of course, DM Wing is one of the channel members, so feel free if you want to join the channel. You do get access to a whole bunch of early access videos. So that is the next week. Let's see. I'm hoping that on the 13th we can get back to Eric with Erica. Erica has told me that she thinks that week she'll be good. So if you've been missing Eric with Erica while Erica was busy doing silly things like getting married or going to Africa, which are actually both really important things, and I'm really happy for her. But yeah.
You need to tell her that she has one bucket list item if she goes to Africa. She has to listen to Africa by Toto in Africa.
Well, that would have to wait for her next trip because she's back in the
I'm just
States.
saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, so the 13th will hopefully be another Eric with Erica, and I'm not sure which series is starting up on the 15th of next month. I think it's my Spirit Science 2-parter. Also, Sal says, there is a chance I'll be debating Atheist Junior on evolution. I got recruited by James, not something I asked for, Tuesday, 9 p.m. So, there you go. If you have decided to overlook the fact that Modern Day Debate has started having National Socialist German Workers' Party types on, that's a place you can go to look at that debate. And actually, I do think it would probably be an interesting debate.
I've called that channel trash well before that, and I will continue to call them trash now. James has no integrity in treating shitty ideas like that as if they're worthy of public debate or equal to non-shitty ideas.
Look,
it's just
I think most debates are worthy of, or most ideas are worthy of debate. Let's kill a whole group of people is
not worthy of debate.
Not one of those.
Racial supremacy, not worthy of debate.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. But, you know, it is what it is. Also, if, in fact, Sal or AJ decide that is not the platform that they want, I do have options that they can ask me for that I can probably get them, including this channel, but also other channels that have not been platforming people who would be happy in Germany in 1935. Okay. With that, we're going to go to the end credits. Thank you very much, everybody. Do hit like on the way out, and we are going to be out of here. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Bent Hovind, Cynically Skeptic, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Patrick Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.